started my own business at 18, paid off my debts, and bought a house in cash. Then my family sued me for taking the life my sister deserves. I, 26M, never thought I'd be sitting in a lawyer's office at 26, defending myself against my own family. But here I was, staring at a lawsuit that claimed I had somehow stolen my sister's rightful inheritance by working my ass off since I was 18. Let me back up. Growing up, I was the middle child. My older brother was the golden boy who could do no wrong, and my younger sister was the princess who deserved everything. I was just there, existing in the space between their achievements and needs. My parents made it clear early on that their resources were limited, and they had to prioritize. The prioritization never included me. When I was 16, I started noticing how differently they treated us. My brother got a car for his 18th birthday. My sister got riding lessons, expensive clothes, and a promise of college tuition fully paid. When my 18th birthday came around, I got a card with $50 and a lecture about becoming a man and standing on my own 2 feet. The message was clear. I was on my own. I didn't complain. Instead, I got angry in a productive way. I had been working part-time jobs since 15, saving every penny I could. By 18, I had about $8,000 saved up. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I had always been good with computers and technology, fixing things for neighbors and friends for extra cash. I saw an opportunity in the local market for affordable tech repair and setup services. Most places either charged ridiculous amounts or provided terrible service. I figured I could do better. So I took my savings, bought some tools and parts, registered a sole proprietorship, and started my own repair business. I rented a tiny space in a strip mall, barely bigger than a closet, and got to work. I marketed myself hard on social media, offered fair prices, and actually cared about doing quality work. Word spread fast. The first year was brutal. I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. I slept on a futon in the back of my shop for the first 6 months to save on rent. I ate ramen and whatever cheap food I could find. My parents never asked how I was doing. My siblings certainly didn't care. I was invisible to them unless they needed something fixed for free. By 19, I had expanded. I hired 2 part-time employees and moved into a slightly bigger space. By 20, I had 5 employees and had started offering business IT services to local companies. The money was getting better, but I was still working insane hours and reinvesting everything back into the business. At 22, I landed a major contract with a regional chain of stores to handle all their IT infrastructure. That changed everything. The revenue jumped significantly, and I finally started paying myself a decent salary. I also started paying off the business loans I had taken out to expand, determined to own everything outright. My family's attitude during all this was interesting. When I was struggling, they ignored me. When I started succeeding, they suddenly remembered I existed. My mom would call occasionally to ask about the business, always with this tone that suggested she was owed something for raising me. My sister would make comments about how lucky I was, how easy I had it because I didn't have college debt like her. The irony was thick considering she had every penny paid for by our parents while I had bootstrapped everything myself. I kept my head down and kept working. By 24, I had paid off all my business debts. The company was profitable, stable, and growing. I had built something real from nothing, and I was proud of it. That's when I decided to buy a house. I had been living in a small apartment, still keeping my expenses low despite being able to afford more. I had been saving and investing aggressively, knowing that real estate in our area was appreciating fast. I found a modest 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy but solid in mine. The asking price was reasonable, and I had enough saved to pay cash. Paying cash for a house at 25 felt surreal. I closed the deal on a Friday, and by Saturday, I was moving in. I didn't announce it to anyone. I just quietly made it happen. My mom found out 2 weeks later when she drove by and saw me working in the yard. She called me immediately, demanding to know what was going on. I told her I had bought a house. She asked how I paid for it, and I told her I paid cash. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then came the questions. Where did I get that kind of money? Why didn't I tell them? Didn't I think my siblings might need help? The interrogation went on for 20 minutes before I finally said I had to go and hung up. That's when things got weird. My sister called me the next day, crying. She told me it wasn't fair that I had a house when she was still renting. She had just graduated college and was working an entry-level job in her field, and she felt like she deserved better. I reminded her that she had zero student debt thanks to our parents, while I had built everything myself from nothing. She didn't want to hear it. She just kept saying it wasn't fair, that I had gotten lucky, that I should help her. I refused, not out of spite, but because I knew that helping her would never be enough. She didn't want a hand up, she wanted a handout. There's a difference. My brother chimed in next. He called to lecture me about family responsibility. He had gotten his degree, gotten married, and was working a corporate job, but apparently he also felt entitled to my success. He suggested I should consider my family in my financial decisions, maybe help them out since I clearly had more than I needed. I asked him point blank what he had ever done for me. The silence told me everything. My parents were the worst. They showed up at my house unannounced one evening, demanding to talk. My dad did most of the talking while my mom cried in the background. He explained that they had always assumed their children would help each other out as adults, that family meant supporting one another. He said my sister was struggling to save for a house, and my brother and his wife wanted to start a family, but needed a bigger place. He actually suggested I should consider selling my house and splitting the proceeds with my siblings to make things fair. I laughed, not a polite chuckle, but a genuine laugh of disbelief. I asked him if he was serious. He was. I told them no. I told them that for my entire childhood and young adulthood, they had made it clear I was on my own. I had asked for help when I was 18 and starting my business, just a small loan that I would have paid back, and they had refused. They said I needed to figure it out myself. That success meant being independent. So I had done exactly that. I had figured it out myself, worked myself half to death, and built something from nothing. And now that I had succeeded, they wanted to redistribute my success to my siblings who had been given everything on a silver platter. My dad's face went red. He told me I was being selfish and ungrateful. My mom just kept crying, saying she didn't raise me to be so cold. I asked them to leave. They did, but that wasn't the end of it. 2 months later, I was served with legal papers. My family was suing me. The lawsuit was insane. They were claiming that because I had lived under their roof until 18, they had invested in my development and were entitled to a portion of my business earnings. They argued that my sister had been emotionally damaged by my success and needed compensation for the mental distress of watching her younger brother surpass her. They wanted the court to force me to pay them a percentage of my business revenue and to split the value of my house with my siblings. I read through the filing 3 times, convinced it had to be some kind of joke. It wasn't. I hired a lawyer immediately, one of the best in the state. He was expensive, but worth it. When he reviewed the case, he actually laughed and said it was one of the most frivolous lawsuits he had ever seen. But he also warned me that family court could be unpredictable, and we needed to take it seriously. We prepared our defense carefully. I documented everything. Every job I had worked since 15, every dollar I had saved and invested, every business decision and loan and payment. I had receipts, bank statements, tax returns, and business records going back years. I had documentation showing that I had never received financial support from my family after turning 18, that every penny in my business had come from my own work or legitimate business loans that I had paid back in full. My lawyer also deposed my family members, and their testimonies were revealing. My sister admitted under oath that she had never been denied anything by our parents, that her college had been fully paid for, and that she had received a car and ongoing financial support into her 20s. My brother acknowledged that he had received similar support. My parents confirmed that they had given my siblings substantial financial help over the years, but had given me nothing comparable. The trial was surreal. Sitting in that courtroom, listening to my family's lawyer argue that I somehow owed them a portion of my success, felt like being in an alternate reality. Their attorney tried to paint me as a greedy, selfish son who had abandoned his family obligations. My sister cried on the stand, talking about how hard it was to see me succeed while she struggled, conveniently omitting the part about her fully funded education and ongoing parental support. My lawyer destroyed their case methodically. He showed that I had received no inheritance, no trust fund, no family money of any kind. He demonstrated that every asset I owned had been earned through my own labor and business acumen. He pointed out that there was no legal or moral obligation for me to share my success with siblings who had already received far more parental support than I ever had. The judge was clearly annoyed. When my family's lawyer argued that my sister deserved compensation for emotional distress, The judge actually interrupted to ask if there was any precedent for requiring siblings to subsidize each other's lifestyles. There wasn't. After a 2-day trial, the judge dismissed the case entirely. He stated from the bench that the lawsuit was without merit, that adult children have no legal obligation to financially support their siblings or parents absent specific circumstances like dependency or contractual agreements, and that my family's claims were essentially asking the court to redistribute wealth based on feelings of unfairness rather than any legal principle. He also ordered my family to pay my legal fees, which had run into the tens of thousands of dollars. I won, but it didn't feel like a victory. Sitting there listening to the judgment, all I felt was exhausted and sad. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and they had taken me to court because I had succeeded on my own. Update 1. The aftermath of the trial was worse than the trial itself in some ways. My parents refused to speak to me after they were ordered to pay my legal fees. My mom sent me one text message calling me a disappointment and saying I had destroyed our family. My dad didn't even bother with that. They just cut me off entirely. My sister went on a social media rampage. She posted vague messages about family betrayal and how success changes people. Some of our extended family who didn't know the full story started messaging me, asking what had happened and why I was being so cruel to my sister. When I tried to explain, half of them didn't believe me. The other half said I should just pay her something to keep the peace. My brother tried to play mediator for about a week before giving up and picking their side. He sent me a long email about how I could have handled things differently, how I could have been more generous, how family should come first. I didn't bother responding. The isolation was strange. I had built a successful business, bought a house, won a lawsuit, and somehow I was the villain in my family's story. It took me a while to process that and be okay with it. My business kept growing. I hired more people, expanded into cybersecurity services, and started consulting for larger companies. Work became my focus because at least there, success was rewarded rather than resented. About 6 months after the trial, I got a call from my uncle, my dad's brother. He was the only family member who had stayed neutral during everything. He asked if we could meet for coffee, and I agreed. Over coffee, he told me something I hadn't known. Apparently, my parents had taken out a second mortgage on their house a few years ago to pay for my sister's wedding and to help my brother with his down payment. They were struggling financially and had been counting on me to help them out of the hole they had dug. When I bought my house instead of giving them money, they panicked. The lawsuit had been their desperate attempt to force me to solve their financial problems. My uncle told me he thought I should know the truth, but he also said he understood why I had done what I did. He told me he was proud of me for standing up for myself, something he wished he had done more often with his own family. That conversation changed my perspective. I realized their lawsuit wasn't really about fairness or my sister deserving better. It was about their own poor financial decisions and their expectation that I would bail them out because I was the one who had money. I didn't feel guilty after that. I just felt free. Update 2. A year after the trial, something unexpected happened. My sister reached out. Not with an apology, but with a request to talk. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our places. She looked tired. She told me she had been in therapy, working through some things, and her therapist had encouraged her to have an honest conversation with me. I waited for her to continue. She admitted that she had been jealous of me for years. While everyone thought she was the lucky one with everything handed to her, she had felt suffocated by our parents' expectations and comparisons. When I succeeded despite being ignored by them, it made her confront the fact that maybe she hadn't earned anything on her own. The lawsuit had been her way of trying to tear me down to her level rather than building herself up. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. She asked if we could start over, maybe build some kind of relationship as adults separate from our parents. I told her I would think about it. I did think about it for several weeks. Eventually, I agreed to try. We started meeting occasionally for coffee, keeping things surface level at first. It was awkward and sometimes painful, but it was also real in a way our relationship had never been before. My brother never reached out. My parents never apologized. They continued to act like I was the one who had wronged them. I heard through my uncle that they had to sell their house eventually because they couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments. They moved into a smaller place and blamed me for their downsizing, even though their financial problems were entirely of their own making. I felt bad for them in an abstract way, but I didn't feel responsible. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. Update 3. I'm writing this final update 2 years after the initial trial. Life has settled into a new normal. My business hit a major milestone last month. We crossed 10 million in annual revenue. I have 23 employees now, people who depend on me for their livelihoods. That responsibility feels more real and important than any family obligation I was supposed to feel. My relationship with my sister has evolved into something cautiously friendly. We text occasionally and meet up every few months. She's not in my life in any deep way, but there's no longer active hostility. She got engaged recently to someone who seems good for her, and she told me she's paying for her own wedding this time. I took that as growth. I eventually bought my uncle dinner and picked up the tab at a nice restaurant as a thank you for being honest with me. He brushed it off, but I could tell he appreciated it. He's the only family member invited to my future wedding, whenever that happens. As for my parents and brother, we remain estranged. I heard my brother had a kid, making them grandparents, but I found out through social media rather than any personal communication. That stung a little, but not as much as I expected. The house I bought in cash has appreciated significantly in value. My investments have grown steadily. The business continues to thrive. By every objective measure, I made the right decisions. But the cost was my family, or at least the illusion of family I had grown up believing in. Sometimes late at night, I think about what might have happened if I had just given them money when they first asked. Would we still be a family? Maybe. But I also know that giving in would have established a pattern. They demand, I provide, and my own agency and accomplishments matter less than their expectations. I chose a different path. I chose to build something that was entirely mine, to succeed on my own terms, and to refuse to be punished for that success. The lawsuit was their attempt to control me one last time, and losing it forced them to confront the fact that I was never going to play the role they had assigned me. I don't regret my choices. I built a life I'm proud of, a business that matters, and relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. My family sued me for taking the life they thought my sister deserved, but the life I built was never hers to take. It was mine because I earned it, every single piece of it. And that's something no lawsuit could ever change. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot to us.